Hello. Okay, welcome back to the podcast. We've taken a little pause in the podcast for the last week as I've been focusing on some big behind the scenes things. However, I wanted to introduce you to this beautiful conversation that has been invited by Joe Fulton, who asked a question inside of our community group on what do I wish I'd known before I started. And this is such a complex question because I'm a strong believer that I've learned everything in the divine timing, that it doesn't matter when you learn a lesson as long as you learn it. But the more I sat with this question, the more I realized that there was something big that I wish I'd known. And this big thing that I'd wish I'd known actually could have had the potential to shift my business much faster if I was ready to move through the obstacle of this belief and actually drop into the energy of my fullest potential. Before we go into this episode, I just want to give a big shout out to Gemma Brooks, who has sponsored this episode and is also the sponsor for our Map Out Your Year event happening in November in Manchester in the UK. Gemma Brooks is an incredible psychic medium who offers readings and intuitive development to her clientele. And you can catch her details in the comment section down below and join her space, the Spiritual Mother Hustlers, to grow and connect with yourself even deeper. Okay, what did I wish I'd known? I wish that I'd known where I continuously discredited myself. Because for a long time in my life, I stopped myself from moving forward faster. And I stopped myself from moving forward faster because I was struggling to see myself through the lens of possibility. And because I was struggling to see myself through the lens of possibility, I kept myself in this cycle of downplaying, underestimating, holding myself back, and not seeing the potential for me to have the things that I wanted. Now, when I look at my business, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've grown a lot. I've, navigated a lot. But the biggest things that always shouts out to me is where I continuously depleted myself by not having the awareness of my leadership. Now, I'm a strong believer that I've always been passionate. And if you look back through my life, I know that I've always been passionate. Even as a teenager, I had so much passion at my gifts and my skill set and the change that I got to create on this planet. But when I come into my passion, yes, passion is 80% of our business, but I know some of the most passionate people out there that are not making money and are not growing and scaling sustainable businesses. And the reason behind that is because the way that they're moving forward and the way that they're creating their community is completely focused on their passion and not their leadership. Now, for me, I wasn't a leader in life. I was actually quite submissive. I would sit there and let other people decide what we were doing, where we were going, how our life was going to look, because I didn't want to draw attention to myself. And if you look at my personality now, people are always shocked to find out that in my teenage years, I'd gone through a period where I was super confident, and then around the age of 15, 16, I just lost all of my confidence. I stopped socializing. I remember crying to my mom because I had no friends to go to prom with. And she was like, I'll find you someone. And I went with a group of girls that I'd never even socialized with at school. But I just lost all my confidence and my ability to be around people. And when I look at that and when I look at the energy of that, it's because I didn't want to draw limelight to myself. I didn't have this big personality. I didn't have the most flamboyant energy. And I feel around the age of 15 to 16, when you're finding your personality trait and who you are and how you serve the world, I just couldn't figure that out. I wasn't the funny one. I wasn't the pretty one. I wasn't the clever one. And I was like, well, if I don't know who I am, then who the fuck am I? And so I just reverted back from every setting in my life until I started my business that really forced me to face my confidence and say, confidence is not something that you're granted inside of the womb. You don't come fresh out of the womb with confidence. You birth it. And you birth it through the decision and the decisiveness of who you desire to be. So when I stepped in my business, I decided to become the most confident version of me and really bring more of my personality and my energy to the surface. But the thing that I really struggled with was my leadership, because I'd always been somebody that had blended into the background. So when I came into the online space, getting myself out there, getting my voice, my communication, my confidence out there, it was something that was super scary and intimidating to me. And so I put my passion forward, and my passion was channeling readings. My passion was guiding my clients deeper in their business. My passion was helping holistic entrepreneurs. But my passion wasn't enough, because there are hundreds of passionate people on the earth that want to guide in your industry. And especially now social media is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. There are so many people in your industry on social media. And so I couldn't quite find my voice in a way that said, I'm here, like, you get to go on this journey with me. So I'd find myself being this stopping station where people would stop to have readings, and they'd stop to, get a little bit of a hit of energy, but they weren't necessarily investing in me. And the only reason why they weren't investing in me is because I wasn't stepping forward in my leadership. I was leaving everything up to them as to whether they decided to work with me, which, yes, it's up to them, but I also have to take that radical responsibility into myself and the leadership and the communication which I'm sharing with the world. And what I mean by that is I spent the first 2 years of my business not allowing myself to be loud about my offerings, not allowing myself to find comfort with selling, not allowing myself to draw too much attention to me because I was scared about how that would make other people feel. And the truth was, I was intimidated by myself. I'd always been the creative energy. I'd always been known as the psychic and the channel. And so I battled for a long time. I'm going to lose my connection with myself if I make this too much about the business. And if you're a spiritual or a holistic entrepreneur, you will understand what I mean when money feels like this struggle of, I want to be in my heart, but also I want to make money. And the thing that I had to get really comfortable with, and I would say I wish I'd known this before I started, was that I could be in my heart and still be in my leadership. I could be in my heart and my passion and my magnetic communication whilst also still being in my leadership. Because my leadership was what I wish I'd known even sooner. The version of me that was slightly intimidating, that was incredibly ballsy and took risks on herself. It wasn't normal for me to be that person. It wasn't normal for me to move in that way. But when I started to give myself permission to hold that attention and hold that limelight, I realized that I could hold way more than I'd ever given myself credit. So when I look at my business really started to shift when I got comfortable with the fact of, I'm not going to please everybody. Not everybody is going to enjoy me, going to enjoy my content. Not everybody is going to want to be a part of my world, but I'm going to focus on bringing my leadership and not be afraid to sell. And the thing about this is, for a long time, I just sat there waiting for money to materialize, waiting for things to happen in my business. And the truth is, nothing happened until I shifted. Once I started to invite myself into the sale, hold the sale even deeper in my energy, not be afraid to drop into my client's inbox and say, hey, I have this thing, do you want to buy it? That's when things really started to shift. And I had to learn to have that level of leadership with myself because I'd normalized not taking responsibility of myself. I'd normalized praying that the universe was going to have my back, and it wasn't the reality. And I think for a long time, I'd normalized it to a place that was detrimental. I'd always believed that spirit was going to have my back. And I think that's like the beauty and the badness in having a strong relationship with spirit. Regardless of the situation, I know that spirit will pull through and everything is in my greatest good. But this also became a trauma response of, I don't need to have the answers. I don't need to figure it out. I'm just going to hope, and I'm just going to have faith, and I'm just going to trust, and spirit will do something. And so in my business, I never had a launch plan. I never had structure. I never knew what I was doing. Everything was like, throw things at a wall and let's just hope that it sticks, because I truly believed that spirit would support me in figuring it out. And it did to a certain degree, right? But my business didn't really shift until I allowed myself to say, hey, Rosie, yes, you have a great relationship with spirit, but what if your relationship with spirit gets to be deepened when you start to hold your foundation and hold this platform for spirit to come through even deeper? And that took so much from me, because for a long time, it felt uncomfortable. I literally felt like I wanted to gorge my eyes out whenever I felt about structure and funnels, and the thought of it used to give me the ick. And I remember sitting there and being like, I'm not going to be that person. I'm not going to be the person that has the funnel, and I'm not going to be the person that has this, and I'm not going to be the person that has that, because whenever I looked at the people like that, I was like, regurgitate. No, thank you. I do not want that. But then I'd see them selling, and I'd see them making a fuck ton of money, and I'd see all these things happening in their life and business. And one day I just sat there and realized, Do you know what? This has nothing to do with the structure and everything to do with you meeting yourself. You're uncomfortable being that organized. You're uncomfortable being that safe. You're uncomfortable having your shit together. You're uncomfortable, finding peace in your business where you get to communicate yourself in that way. And I was so intimidated by the version of me that could slide into someone's DMs and say, I thought of you when I launched this, and drop them the link and make them money. But I had to get comfortable with that version of myself to really grow and scale my business. And the truth is that that's a decisiveness. I think for a long time in my life, I'd been indecisive. And until I was decisive around the life that I really wanted, everything just got me by. I'd always been somebody who'd visualized this big life monetarily and materialistically and the things that I wanted for myself. Even as a young teenager, before I went to France to work, I remember just visioning these big, bold things for myself. And not from a place of I need things, but from a place of look at how expansive that gets to feel. And so from the age of 16, I'd started developing my mind. I started working on myself, setting goals for myself. But the truth was the goal never happened because I was never decisive. And nobody told me that it was just decisiveness that created what you wanted. And the truth is it is. Whatever you want right now, whatever money you desire to make today in your business, you can have it if you're decisive. If you decide that today gets to be a 2K day, it can be a 2K day. But you have to decide it and you have to give yourself permission to lean in. Because when you decide it and you allow yourself to lean in, you amplify the energy and you amplify the magnitude. Now, on that decisiveness, I'd say that the thing that's constantly evolving and the lesson that I'm always learning is that it's the level of who you decide you are in the moment. And there's been so many mistakes that I've made in my business where I've done things at a capacity, but not at the biggest capacity that they could have been because I haven't been decisive at the highest possible level. I've decided things that haven't been in my greatest good, whether that be price point, venues of events, collaborations, different things where I've lowered the frequency by not really thinking things through. And I think as a business owner, the thing that I'm constantly maturing into is every single thing has to be thought through in your business. Every single decision of how you move forward, of how you choose yourself, of how you claim yourself has to be thought through. And the more you think through your content, and the more you think through the imprintation that you're leaving on this world, and the more you think through absolutely everything, the bigger the impact that you're going to create. So I think if the lesson that I've had to learn to the deepest degree was going to be communicated, it'd be about really understanding how other people were perceiving me by me not being decisive to the highest level, and how I needed to be decisive to an even bigger level by choosing myself and committing to a bigger standard, whilst also giving myself permission to not be intimidated by that standard and by the version of myself who moves in a bigger way. So what I want you guys to be thinking about as you're listening to this is, who do you want to be? And what would you move like? And how would you be decisive if you were already that version of yourself? But what does it look like to be more intentional with the decisions that you're making? What does it look like to choose yourself at a higher level? What does it look like to give yourself permission to go all in before you're ready and see yourself at the level of structure and intimidation, yet still allow it into existence? Because I was so intimidated by myself, but I still allowed myself to play like that. I was so intimidated by the potential of who I got to be, but I still allowed myself to play in that energy. Now, if you've enjoyed this episode, drop me a like and subscribe down below. I feel like some of these episodes I could riff for hours on all of the things, but I'm trying to keep these in light doses so that you can just plug in and listen to them whilst you're walking the dog, whilst you're feeding the pets, doing whatever you do on your morning or evening routine. But as you're dropping in, let me know what questions that you have come to the surface, because I want to plug in and answer those questions here in our community-led project.